Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. So I got myself some leaves. I think these are an acer plant. It was in the middle of summer, not autumn, but the plant appeared to have died. The leaves all dried out, so I acquired a few for an idea I've had for a while for a book cover with a kind of nature theme, where we would use leaves on some board. This is a plywood sheet, and just make some kind of nice leaf covered panel for our book. So I then added some leaf granola to the gaps in an effort to disguise them. Placed a greaseproof page over the top, popped it in the book press. When I took it out of the book press, yes, that looks really good. I'm pleased with that. So I took some scissors, trimmed around the edge, and then gave the whole thing a coating of watered down PVA glue, around a 50-50 mix, PVA and water. And there were some spaces that needed filling. The leaves either fell off or broke, so I added some. Popped it in the book press and repeeled it off again. And look at that, nice. I took another couple of leaves which I decided to paint. Some I painted gold, some red, some terracotta red, some brown, just to see what would happen. Now I really should have painted the board before I started, but I didn't realise there would be so many gaps. So I mixed up a kind of putrid brown colour and just went around trying to put it in the gaps just to help disguise them a little bit. So I mixed up some different shades and painted the gaps in, and I painted some leaves, some of the dead ones and a couple that had just fallen off that were still green. Once that was dry, I got some gold paint, without glitter in it this time, just gold, and just followed the veins of the leaf. I don't know, I just thought it might look nice. I wasn't sure how it would look. I don't think I had a fine enough brush for it, but I kind of like the rustic look. And then just really dry brush. Dip your brush into some red paint and then wipe off most of it. And then just stipple it on. And I used that one for the left and that other one with red and gold edges for the right. And then put that in the book press for a bit longer. Once it dried, or was on its way to drying, I just peeled off the greaseproof paper. I like this moment. As at this point I wanted to measure and cut it into two boards, one for the front and one for the back cover of the book. And with that being thin plywood, it didn't take long to score a line from both sides and cut through. I had to cover up some holes again, so I put another gold painted leaf in the corner of the second book cover, and then covered the whole thing in a glaze of PVA glue. Not watered down, just neat out of the bottle. And set that aside to dry. Once dried, it didn't stay as shiny, it did turn a bit more matte coloured. I'll decide which one I want for the front and which for the back, and I want some kind of border to protect that edge. So I found these bamboo straws, which I decided I could cut down one side, cut a groove into it, and then it would hopefully slide on to the board. It was quite destructive sliding it on, it was damaging the leaves, so I didn't want to remove it to put glue on, and so I just put it on and left it there. The long edge was fine, didn't have to cut those straws down, and it left a little gap at the top and bottom, so the short edge I just cut to length. I had to go and buy a couple of packets to have enough to do both, and that's how they looked. This was the next morning, and the sun was coming in, so they do look a bit orange in the morning sun. But the bamboo I wanted to paint, so this is a cup of coffee. I thought I'd stain the bamboo with coffee. I thought that would keep in with the nature type theme I'm going for. After several coats I decided it wasn't going to get any darker. I was hoping it would go a lot darker, but I still like the colour. And that was the result of that. I'll do a third one and just hang it on the wall like a triptych set of pictures, but I wanted to make book covers, and that's what they're going to be. Deciding which will be the front and which will be the back. And to attach them together I bought this linen tablecloth, cheap from a local store, and removed the border, didn't want that. Cut it to length. Placed it on the book covers with a 4 or 5 squares in between. Each square is a centimetre on this cutting mat, so roughly about 1.5 to 2 inches, not like 1 3/4 inch. And I glued down one edge just to get it in the right position. Fold it back and glue the whole thing. Work my way along until all of it's glued down. And at this point you've just got the front and back glued to a piece of cloth, so you need some kind of spines. I used this cardboard tube, which was actually the inner tube from a kitchen foil, so a fairly sturdy one. I don't want to use one from just like kitchen towel that might be quite a thin. And then to cut it at the right height, because it's not really half, you don't want half, you want say a third of the roll. I just placed it in and then ran the pencil down the side of it, holding it in place. That way I had a line on both sides where to cut, and that's that cut in place, and that's the other piece. You can see it's slightly bigger than half. I'll run a bead of glue and down the bottom and stick it in place. Give it a bit of a clean up with some sandpaper, Just take the rough bits off. Once I position that how I wanted it, I ran some glue down the sides of it just to make sure it was definitely well and truly held in place. Not going to go anywhere. And the same thing to the other side. And stuck a piece over the spine just to cover it up so you can't see the cardboard. Which wouldn't have mattered for the next step, because I thought I'll use the remaining piece of material, cut that to size, and I want to make it like a pocket on the right hand side. So the left hand side will be glued down, the spine will be glued, the right hand side will only be glued down the right hand edge, the very edge, so that right hand page will be like a pocket of material. Now I was wondering whether to fold it up and make a loop at the bottom, or just cut it the same size as the other one. In the end I went for cutting it the same size, and the rotary cutter was the perfect tool for this job, although my ruler with the safety edge isn't quite long enough. I'll trim that down to size and then place that over the top. Get it in exactly the right position. What I want to do is place my pad, my art pad, in there. So I've got to have enough room down the right hand edge to glue it. It's pretty tight, but I think it'll work. So I'll fold that back and I run a bead of glue down the edge. Now if I'd thought about this idea before I'd glued that down, I could have stitched it on instead of gluing it. I only came up with this idea after actually looking at the finished piece and then deciding how I was going to proceed. So I want to keep that glue right on the edge. I don't want it to spread in too far if I can help it. So once that's done, fold that back, and I want to let that dry a bit more before I accidentally fold it back and wreck it. So I'll give it a few minutes to dry. Not long, it doesn't need long, it takes quite quickly. My edge is still tacky, but it's dry now, so a few moments later. So I shall now glue this spine. I figured that I would spread the glue right over the spine, because I'm not going to have any way of getting in there if I just glue down the middle. I didn't want to add the glue to the edges like I did before. I wouldn't be able to get the glue in there. So I had to do that piece all in one go and pray that I got everything lined up and it was going to work. And because it was all lined to the right hand side, it worked perfectly. What I like about this Uhu glue is it didn't actually come through the material. It stuck it down perfectly fine, but it didn't actually shine through. I was worried it would squeeze out, but it didn't. It's really nice. Need some ventilation though, because it is quite strong smelling. So we get that spread out and fold it over. Pressing it down to keep all the wrinkles, working from the centre out. Spread some more glue and continue. Make sure that's covering up the other sheet as much as possible. And now we have a pocket inside the book cover. I'm going to let that dry for a while. When you have a look, you can see the pocket there. It's open at the top and the bottom. The edge is glued nice and solid. So I take my A5 art pad. I can slot that in. Hopefully, push it down. It will protrude out the bottom a little bit, but I'm not bothered about that. There's the reusable nature themed art pad. There's one of my drawings ready to continue and fill up with lots and lots of drawings, and once I'm finished I can just pull that out, put in a new one and carry on. Excellent, pleased with that. Reusable, nature themed, nature inspired book cover.